that's working. Great. Welcome, everybody. We are going to kick off the session on empowering frontline workers. And before I get started introducing our wonderful panelists, I just want to share that we had really hoped to have frontline workers here. Now, we do have one with Devin, but we really wanted to have produce managers, kitchen staff, dishwashers, line production leads. But as you guys can imagine, they're out there doing the work. And they can't be here to do that. So I do want to just take a moment to recognize the fact that it's really a luxury we have to talk about this, but it's really them doing the work and coming up with the ideas. And that's what we really want to talk about today, is how you can really engage them and leverage their knowledge and their insights to really drive a change in culture or change in engagement on food waste within the operations with which they work. So with that, I'd like to introduce myself, and then I'll have our panelists introduce themselves. So my name's Garsztka. I am with the World Wildlife Fund, and for the most part work with the U.S. Waste Pact, supporting our signatories and working groups and intervention pilots. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the team to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Devin Adams. I'm district chef of catering on a large tech B&I account out here in South Lake Union. I oversee 3 production kitchens, doing over 200 events a week across South Lake Union, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond. We serve over up to 14,000 guests a week. Breakfast, lunch, receptions, large meeting center events. And I oversee kind of the menu development, the waste diversion, and hiring all those processes.
Hi, I'm Ghislaine Challamel. I'm with the Stanford Food Institute. And before we started that session, I was telling Anne I feel so honored to be there and talk on behalf of all the people who worked on the FoodWise project that I will probably allude to during this session. The Stanford Food Institute and the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative are 2 entities that are very involved in advancing the Menus of Change principles. I don't know if you are familiar with them, but they are really a way to embed sustainability in the kitchens. And in the dining halls. We use dining halls as living laboratories, so that makes our students guinea pigs, and see how we can study eating behaviors, advancing plan-forward menus, and also working with our staff to find ways to make our dining halls more sustainable. The use of technology, and that's what we've seen in the different initiative that we've done, are one tool. I think what we are going to talk about is also the importance of the culture, and I think I'm very excited to discuss that with my co-panelist.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kate Gaertner. I'm the founder of TripleWin Advisory. We are a corporate sustainability consultancy. We're based in Portland, Oregon. The reason why I'm here, and I'm going to be channeling the frontline workers that I've been interacting with for the last couple of years, we were commissioned to work on the first employee engagement project with Bob's Red Mill, which is a grain manufacturer in Portland, Oregon. Back in 2022. That was really successful. And we then were asked to work again with Land O'Lakes, Cozy Shack in California, and then again with Fresh Del Monte in their North Portland plant. And all of that learning and experience alongside some significant interviews, one-on-one interviews with corporations and individuals across other sectors of hospitality, retail, quick service, restaurants, and food service, culminated in the development of the employee engagement toolkit that can be found on the U.S. Waste Pact website under resources. So that's why I'm here. I'm going to have probably more of a manufacturing frontline worker perspective. I'm excited to talk.
Great. Thank you all for giving your introductions. I thought we'd just start with kind of an insight that you might have had in your role or in your observations that really told you, like, this is solvable. Like, I could see change really happening, be it culture change, be it operational change, maybe share an anecdote or a data point that said, yeah, this is possible. So if you want to jump in with an example or an answer.
Yeah, so growing up, my parents had a restaurant, so I got to see, as I was a dishwasher on the weekends, all the food that goes into the garbage that I had to take out, which was, as a 14-year-old, it was a big labor that I was kind of annoyed about. My parents saw it as dollars and cents. And so I've always taken that with me through my career as I've grown up and designed menus around those kind of pieces. So starting it with the business mind and then becoming more about team-oriented training. On my tech account that we work with, there's technology, obviously, that comes into play. So on campus, there's what they call vulture culture. So that's where EAs will go up onto a Slack channel and kind of say, hey, we have an event going on. Once my team's through, anybody feel free, come through, get some scones and some, make all the platters empty. So that was another cool piece that, working with the client and seeing how the EAs kind of work with the teams across campus, technology has really helped me realize that there's more of a team-oriented aspect to solving food waste.
It's interesting to hear you, and I'm French, and food waste is not translatable. There is something that I realized is there is no food waste. There is trim, there is compost, there is surplus, but food waste is something that doesn't exist. It's an operational opportunity. I was telling Anne, operational mistake, no, an opportunity, and so that means that's solvable.
My perspective is similar to Devin's in that it was just so eye-opening to be at Bob's Red Mill at this massive manufacturing plant, and we actually and we ran Gamble walks. So it was groups, teams of individuals. There were engineers there. There were sustainability directors, a few of us from TripleWin, and we also had frontline workers and supervisors in those teams. And we walked not only the plant, but we walked their retail store, which is a very famous store, sadly, that just closed shop, but they had a restaurant, a bakery, and they sold dry goods as well as other food-related items. And so we did gumbo walks of all of those. And to be able to be in this group and have individuals see things differently in the plant as it was operating and active was such a unique experience where there were so many opportunities and they weren't just piles of waste. Sometimes you saw piles of waste and bins of waste, but a lot of times it's that small waste that happens every day, multiple times a day, consistently over months and years. And it's just part of the operations. And then somebody says, well, what can we do about that? That was really eye-opening for me.
Great, thank you. I think you guys have all talked about or alluded to collaboration, working across the teams, but what steps have you taken, or what steps would you recommend to really get that collaboration happening and get the energy behind the efforts?
I don't know how many of you were in the session that just happened, and it was eye-opening, right? And I think this is really what we did, is give an opportunity to our frontline workers to stop and think, to observe, and to value their feedback on what they saw, to celebrate them even. There were so many ideas that came out of and maybe we can talk a little bit about how that program works, because basically we trained our frontline worker every day for a month during the shift meetings for 5-10 minutes about food waste. And then we asked them to submit ideas and to participate in a contest. And then we asked the managing team to select the idea that they thought would be the most impactful, but also the easiest to implement. And we implemented that idea for a month and learned of what worked, what didn't, and how it went. And I think being able to do that and to allow the staff to observe and share and to give them, as we were all instructed to count the F this morning, like give them the right background, the right information that they needed to have in order to do what we wanted them to do was really, really eye-opening.
Yeah, one piece that we do on campus in my unit, we do setup pictures that we use a Compass social media app to say, hey, we're set up on time, everything looks good. But then we also started implementing a post-event picture. Let's collect data on how large are the Schaefer pans left of rice or chicken or pieces like that. So we have buy-in from the front of the house that there's less food to pick up. As they're taking pictures, they're reflecting, hey, this party or this group never eats the rice. So we're able to kind of work in real time to change what we're sending out, what we're selling, and inform the EA, hey, your team's not really big on this chicken. Let's change it up and make it more successful for you and also prevent the extra waste. So there's kind of a whole loop that we do from every Friday. We look at these photos at our invoice meetings for the next week, talk through what worked, what didn't work. We ran out of this way too fast. Okay, let's increase a little bit of the amounts here. But we kind of keep notes on each team, each EA, and what groups are booking with us so that, okay, this person only needs 80% of the protein that we generally will serve, or it's a much more vegetarian group. We need to increase our proteins, vegetarian proteins. So there's just a constant feedback loop that has just continued to grow in some of the systems that we use.
And try to keep it short, which is, I think knowledge is power. So we really focused on education and education through training and training videos. We started out with a 15-minute video, went to 12-minute video, and now on the toolkit, there are 5 minutes and 3 minutes. The other thing, so I think that education is power, and I think it's empowering. One of the things that we saw over and over again across those 3 manufacturing engagement projects is that the frontline workers were allowed to voice what they know, and they craved. Okay, you're asking us what we think you should do. What are you now doing with that information? Give us some feedback. Let's have a two-way communication because we don't want it just to go into the ether, right? We're giving you a lot of ideas. At Bob's Red Mill, there was about 177 ideas that were submitted by employees. There was about 277 food waste ideas that were submitted at Cozy Shack and around 200 at Fresh Del Monte. That's a lot. Okay, they were like, well, tell us what you're gonna do with them. We would like you actually to implement them. And so being able to empower them and give voice to what they know was really critical and I think very powerful.
I think on that theme of empowering, what would you recommend or what did you observe in terms of empowering frontline workers? So, and I'll connect this to a session yesterday where they talked about the tone from the top. Like you do need leadership buy-in, you do need leadership support, but sometimes leadership, they'll say they want to, but they can't actually prioritize it. But how can you help a frontline worker take the initiative? What kind of environment do they need to be able to say, hey, I see a problem. How can I lean in and be a part of the solution?
Yeah, so at Compass Group, we use a system called WasteNot 2.0. There's a tablet that can collect data from each station. So I put a bucket on the table for everybody prepping and say, okay, hot side, when this is full, go to the tablet, enter the weights, and let's collect some of that data. A lot of people just check that off and say, yeah, I'm doing that. And that's, okay, cool, we did it. So how does that where do you go from there? So we actually collected, I do a kind of a month-end reporting with the team and say, hey, this month we're 5% less than last month. What's different? And kind of make a conversation and change the culture with my team itself. hey, the berries are coming in way fresher because it's summer, so we're not tossing as many. We noticed that bell peppers are coming in with less seeds, so there's less trim that we're throwing into the compost or in that prep bin. And so making it a conversation with my team is able to have their buy-in, and they feel empowered when we celebrate those wins of, hey, 5% less. I ran some data from January through May end. Based over last year, we had an 18% reduction in waste based on that Waste Not tablet. So, everyone's kind of seeing that and buying in and actually trying to find ways to, cut cleaner and have less trim or find a way to use that trim.
No, I love that, and I think that's really true. What you're saying is just going into the detail, like go in the dumpster. I think the biggest advice is start small, work on visible, impactful things that your team they see it, and start with your own station or your own restaurant. Like don't ask others to do it, just do it. We have so many examples, but just one, like store cilantro in damp paper. It saves it for so many more days. And these are the kind of solutions that our workers came with. These are not like world-changing solutions. They are just, very easy to implement. And I think saying to the team, your voice matters, helping them come out with real-world solutions that are, workable ideas, and showing that to leadership makes leadership listen, because we all have the same goal. Like nobody wants to waste food, and leadership sees the value of reducing food waste. I think this is also very important because it shows the value of our worker, as was said many times during these 2 days. The turnout of our staff is very high, but if we value them, if we train them, and if we value them towards leadership, saying, hey, my team came up with that idea, this is how we keep them.
I don't know if I'm going to share any more additional new ideas, but maybe reinforce a few. One is through the Gemba walks. So allowing the frontline workers to participate in those Gemba walks. It gives them a voice and allows them to be a leader on food loss and waste within that plant facility organization. A lot of the employee engagement that we did, we incentivized them. Right? We communicated with them the goals that we wanted them to achieve, but then we also recognized them individually. We put them on closed caption televisions. We put them on posters, their faces. We gave out prizes, and they don't have to be significant prizes. Literally maybe even a Starbucks card for $5 or $10. They love that. They particularly loved branded merchandise for the company that they work for, right? Because they're really loyal. And then from Fresh Del Monte, because they were working with fresh vegetables and fruits, it was an interesting, when we were doing our pilot, we were having some mixed results with food waste reduction for certain fruits like cantaloupe and watermelon or the mangoes. And what we realized is that yields changed based on, dependent on whether it was early spring, early summer, late summer, right? So fruit gets bigger or smaller, and so it goes back to training. So just ensuring that you're trying to get optimal yields as you're cutting away the skin or you're chopping off the top and the bottom is constantly sort of reinforcing, okay, things are changing and moving with the merchandise that's coming in, the produce is coming in. Let's just double down and ensure that we're optimizing our material yields.
I think on that point, and I think you alluded to it too, like the seasons change, strawberries are fresher, seed quantities are different. I think that's something we've started to observe across the case studies in the Pact is you need to look longitudinally. You may not be able to do something in a month. You can glean insights and learnings, but you really may need to recheck quarter over quarter, season over season, first semester over second semester if you're in higher ed, or summer versus the fall when staff is on vacation in the summer and there's a lighter, lighter load in the kitchen. So looking at things across time is also important to gain that insight. I'm going to continue with questions, but I did forget to say at the beginning, we will open this up to Q&A for you all, so be collecting your thoughts on that. But I am going to do a few more questions myself before I give the mic out to you all. So with that, I was curious, and I'm going to look to Kate because I know the Bob's Red Mill answer. What were some of the ripple effects of some of the work that has been done in food waste, and has it had a culture impact, operational impact, or maybe if you can even speak to any of you, to financial impacts?
I think this is just something that's going to be repeated. The ripple effect is that the employees felt heard, and they felt closer to the organizations. They felt like they had an impact, that this was something they could rally around individually and collectively. So one of the survey outtakes, we always did a post-survey of the frontline workers that participated in the employee engagement challenges, is they said, we want to know what the company's going to do with all these ideas, and we love the fact that we did this together as a team. So that the collective action aspect was really powerful for them.
Yeah, no, of course. I think we are also, in all the initiatives that we've done, like much more than we were expected to, and differently too. I mean, I was thinking that the measuring aspect of our pilot would be important, and in fact, the cultural aspect of it was the biggest. The fact that all the team that participated, and I want just to give a little shout out to Mary here, because she was kind of my co-lead on the program. And the amount of conversations that were provoked from the pilot, the sense of ownership from frontline worker was incredible. And this is really, mind-blowing to see that we are kind of sitting on a gold mine and we don't use it.
Yeah, and in the sense of the fruits being fresher or the skins of a pineapple top and bottom being a little thicker, by opening up that communication with the team, we were able to let them have buy-in. And hey, why do we have to do this formulaic fruit platter, right? We're tossing all the berries, we're 80% yield on all the berries we're bringing in. So that actually formed a change to just call it a seasonal fruit platter, and okay, hey, watermelon's no good, don't buy it next week. So we're able to, make those agile changes in the business. Fajita veggies, instead of calling out onions and peppers, let's change it up and just call it fresh seasonal fajita style veggies. So that way we could change those week over week and still make sure that the guest is getting exactly what they want and mitigating the waste as well. So, and that's not coming from me or my chefs, it's coming from the cooks that are seeing this stuff, preparing it daily and saying, we gotta change the product.
And I'm gonna now ask a question, and the thing that shall not be named, AI. But I just wanna ask a technology question. How did you see technology come into play with frontline workers? Were they comfortable with it? Did they lean into it? Or were they like, I could use a pencil and paper?
We were low technology projects, but it was just based on that. We wanted it to be quick win, low cost, easy to implement, right? The employee engagement competitions, we always had a digital aspect. So everything was physically done inside the plants. We had the banners up, we had submission slips, we had, a place where they can actually put it into a box. We always used a QR code. Our post surveys that we had the frontline workers fill out also were either, you could do it physically or they could do it digitally. Less than 10% of the frontline workers use that digital tech option. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have. I think in a manufacturing environment, it's very tough for them to have access to their mobile phones and to have access to Wi-Fi. So it's disallowed in that environment for the most part. And they were likely not going to go home and say, oh yeah, I want to actually fill out that survey, or I have this really great idea. It was on site when they had the best ideas, when the operations were active. So we didn't use technology, and it wasn't well adopted in a manufacturing environment.
This is such an interesting question, because so we had 10 sites, 10 different sites. Some of the sites were very good with QR codes and tech. Some others were not at all, and we had managers filling out the survey for people with their phone, using the QR code and entering the answers on behalf of their staff. Some others did also the paper survey, because that's an easy one too, for the workers, not for the manager, who had to then enter all the data in. So it was really interesting to see how the culture of a place and the fact that they had, for example, a 5-minute pause allowed by the manager to do it with their own phone, or do it in a room altogether, or do it on their own time. Like I think, again, it comes back to the culture of the specific place that we were working with, and that was very interesting. I think all of them used were very happy to give feedback. We had about 40% feedback on our survey, which was like pretty good. But the accessibility of the surveys themselves and the material was very important. We translated the training in 5 languages. The surveys were translated in Spanish. Unfortunately, I put out the Google form before I translated in the other languages using technology. I mean, Google Translate and ChatGPT were really my friends in translating all of the material. And having someone in the team speaking the language allowed me to make sure that, things were correct. But I mean, I learned so much in Haitian Creole and Filipino, and not so much in Chinese, because I couldn't really understand like the characters. But I think technology can help us be better project manager or program managers, because it allows us to be closer to the end user. In that case, people who are English as a second language speaker, and I can relate to that.
On the front line, the cooks and the team isn't really able to use technology. We're touching food and real things and producing it. So, a lot of the ovens we use, a lot of the machinery that we use to slice and dice and things like that, there's some smart technology involved there. But one level up to the chefs and kind of the order writers and things like that, we're able to use our booking system. Has some calculators that can help us, okay, hey, this party just went up by 200 people. And instead of having to grab a calculator and say, okay, how much is the difference here? It actually can calculate that out for the team. So there's some labor saving there, and then also proper order amounts and the inventory we're bringing in and managing, we're able to make sure we're utilizing properly.
Yeah, that's the prevention side of food waste, is get it right before you actually cook it. So I'm going to ask these folks one last question. So after that, I will open it up to the mic. I will hand the mic to Kristen, and just raise your hand and they will take it around and hand it to those of you who have questions. I'm also going to answer this question after you all, but can you share an inspiring story, anecdote, something a frontline worker might have shared with you over the course of your job or the work you've done that would just inspire this group here?
One fun one, I think of my whole team. Everybody's kind of bought into this waste saving or waste not program we have on campus. And they're kind of competitive about it on their stations. So one person one day was like, why don't we make family meal with something that's left over from each station, and we'll see who's the best cook in the kitchen, kind of thing. It's a really tight-knit team, so they all can vote and say, no, that's you're doing the wrong recipe. I would do it this way. And But that way, everybody actually has some buy-in. They're feeding each other. They're talking about how they use this or that in the kitchen. And so, every week it's kind of that's an inspiring thing that I get to be a part of and experience.
I have one, but it's not mine. It's from University of North Texas executive chef who told me that. They had an amazing amount of contribution to the contest, and one of them came from, and he was so surprised, it came from the dishwasher. And that person came to him and say, hey, at the end of the shift, we are putting out so many things to be cooked or to be reheated. And this is the main reason why we have overproduction or surplus, and we have to throw it away or to compost it. And the dishwasher came with that very complex idea of reducing in half the batch cooking 1 hour before the end of the shift, and then reducing at a quarter the batch cooking 30 minutes before the end of the shift. And so this way, there was still the food, it was fresher, it was more delicious, and it reduced food waste. And that's not even the idea that won the contest. And one thing that was really striking to me is that all the teams, they wanted to implement much more ideas than just the one that won the contest. And that was, I think for all the managers, that was really eye-opening to them, is, wow, our team really have very concrete, very tangible, very simple ideas that can make a difference. We all know it's a river made of 1,000 drops, and all these drops matter, and that's really what happened there.
So a nice story that I have is from Cozy Shack. So we were working with Cozy Shack, which makes puddings and flans, and we didn't decide the Gemba team, but one of the individuals was a frontline worker. She'd been there for over a decade. Her name was Rose Zaragoza, and she was tasked, and she was this very soft-spoken, petite woman. She'd been there for a long time, and she was tasked with having us start at the very beginning, receiving the ingredients and walking through the entire plant of going to finished product. And she just quietly, but very consistently, was like, yeah, there's waste right there. And it was, grains falling on the ground because there was a manual lever to stop and start these silos of grains. There's waste right there in the buckets. And it was wet ingredient that wasn't being scraped out that actually happened to be the food waste reduction idea that we implemented at that plant. There's bags of flour. Yeah, they don't shake it out all the way. And so it was all this little stuff. I was thinking it'd be like these big mounds of waste, all these bins of wasted organic product. And it wasn't. It was all this little stuff. And they go through that process about 8 times a day. And so you're just like, oh, it really adds up. And it's things that are just very doable. So, yeah, Rose was awesome.
I think I could name a couple of people, but there's a gentleman at Fresh Del Monte, and he'd only been there about 9 months. He was a new hire, and he had an idea that a couple of others had had. So again, there's a bit of a crowdsourcing moment there where several people identified the solution, but for him, he was like, they listened to me. It was kind of, they pulled us aside and they're like, my boss listened to me. I've only been here 9 months. Is this normal? And just the joy you could see in his face at being heard was just, I was like, okay, even if this test flops, the fact that this gentleman has been heard and could probably go on and speak up again it made the pilot worth it. So I think these little stories of the individuals is what really makes engaging the frontline workers quite exciting. So with that, we are now going to engage with you all. So I'm going to hand this mic to Kristen. I think we got one hand right there.
And as I'm walking, for folks not familiar with Gemba walks, what is a Gemba walk, Kate?
It's from Six Sigma, and it's a continuous improvement mechanism where you get, it's usually done, it can be done weekly, it can be done monthly, it's a continuous improvement thing. So you would get a group of folks together, you want a diverse set of eyes and individuals from all aspects of a hierarchy. And you go out in an active work environment and you start soliciting questions. What do you see? Where's food waste happening? And it's not meant to call anyone out or put anyone under the rug and say you're not doing it correctly. It's meant to just uncover opportunities for mitigating that waste on an ongoing basis. And because it is literally a walk, it can be done for an hour. Sometimes manufacturing plants, it can go for a half a day. It doesn't have to go that long. You collect all these ideas. You have, people writing down all these ideas. You're just asking, and you're seeing what's happening. And then you collect them and aggregate them somewhere that you can then assess them. You can categorize them, prioritize them, and then you determine if you want to pilot them. That's what a Gemba walk is.
Cool. Thanks for speaking. Appreciate it. So I do work in the warehouse environment, manufacturing site. We do have Gemba walks Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I agree it's a great tool for associates, as we call them, at my company, to voice their concerns. And I really like what you said, the empowering. They love getting in front of senior leadership and presenting on what barriers they're having for the day. So I think it's a great mechanism. Maybe a bit off topic, but I'm curious on the second step. So I think there's a lot of good tools shared in here on empowering the frontline workers. I think once you've empowered, you've gotten the ideas, you take something, and you talked about this a bit, you take it from pilot. Kate, you talked about this too, and you pilot it, it goes well. Your next step for scale is really putting it in front of leadership, especially when you work at a large retail environment. So again, maybe off topic, but let's say something goes well, you have an engaged workforce. Now you're going to scale it and you're putting it in front of leadership because you got to present your case. What are some financial advice you would give, ways to put that in front of people to get buy-in for that initiative to scale that? Because I think it's empowerment and then presenting your business case to scale it.
So I'll take that first. Very good question. So we have a couple steps in between that we did at all three of the manufacturing sites. So we solicited all these ideas from the Gemba walks and the competition. They were all put in what's called a food waste opportunity register. It's a workbook, right? And then we cataloged all of that, dated them, put the names of the people who identified those ideas, and then we categorize them and prioritize them. So the categorization could be: this is about employee training. This is a supplier issue. This is an equipment issue, right? So that's categorization. So you understand sort of the buckets it falls in, but also who might own that: the engineer or the sustainability lead, et cetera. The prioritization, you should come to our employee engagement workshop. That's at 2:00 today. The prioritization is, okay, is this a back of the envelope? Is this a quick win opportunity? Is this a gem? Is this really requiring a strategic or capital investment, which is a long-term sort of budgeting exercise, but could have some massive impact? Or is this, we don't want to pursue this right now. This is just not, or it's an indeterminate impact, right? So then we prioritize that. We then identify the quick wins and which ones we're going to implement. And the key step between that and rolling it out, there's two. One is getting data, right? So when you are actually piloting it, we are doing a business as usual of what is the food waste associated with this process or behavior, right? And then we implement the change, and then we analyze food waste reductions, ideally, for that same or similar period of time. Then we do analysis. We look at that data and we sort of say, okay, what is the cost savings there? What's the opportunity? For Fresh Del Monte, there was a massive cost savings because they were throwing away all of this fruit just by taking a sliver, a piece of it, for quality assurance. So they were identifying whether they were actually going to receive the fruit. They were taking just one punctured piece out of it and throwing the rest of it away. The process change there was they took it in to another part of the facility. They did that quality check, but instead of throwing everything out, they then put the rest of it into production to make final goods. So even though we didn't quantify the final product revenue associated with that captured old food waste, significant. And so once we did all of that analysis, we then delivered an executive summary presentation, the business case, to the CSO. And in fact, for Fresh Del Monte, it was such an eye-opening experience that they are now rolling out that idea across North America to their other 6 plants. Did I answer your question?
This is a... Yeah, I would love to go, because what you alluded to is also what we recommend, right? All the ideas that we had more than 120 ideas, and we categorize them in quick wins, disruption, which are kind of things that wouldn't take so much time, but would necessitate a shift in culture. What we call so it's quick win, disruption, and the transformation is the last one, and there are long-term changes. And in fact, most of the ideas were in that quick win bucket. So the leadership is easily convinced for that, because you don't need big investment. We don't need big changes. It's just put the cilantro in a damn paper. And that's one aspect of it. Is some of the implemented ideas were like so simple, you don't really even need to bring that to leadership. In food service and in university dining, usually you have several restaurants, and the chef, they talk a lot. And so that organic sharing, as long as your culture allow it, is maybe the most important in scaling these ideas, is that the chef talk to the other chef, the teams talk to the other team, and they just steal, borrow, are inspired by other people's ideas. In terms of like bigger transformation and things that you need to change, I totally agree with you. The measurement is key. And usually when we measure the success of a program, we focus on the business aspect of it. Do we save money? Do we make money? We focus on satisfaction. Are the students happy? Are they as happy or more happy with the changes that we are making? Two things that we talk a lot about but don't really measure are behavior and mindset change in the team. And this is also a question of investing in the team, is that if you're able to make that behavior change in the back of house from your employees, and you are able to change their mindset that food waste reduction is important and is doable, then this is something that makes the program work. And this is also something that our leadership cannot translate into dollars or into satisfaction, but they can translate in terms of corporate responsibility in a way, that we invest in our team. And I think this is more and more important today, is to show the value of the human being that we work with. And I think this is something that is not as measured as the two other, but should be.
She said what I was going to say.
I am curious how your work ladders upwards in the opposite direction on the supply chain. When thinking about frontline workers who are growing the food, harvesting the food, et cetera, I'm curious how the work you all have done is then communicated upwards to the folks that you buy food from, or where you're sourcing from, and influencing the actual volume that you're sourcing moving forward, supporting those growers and being able to identify other markets to move their food with, et cetera, and or if that the scale at which you've been addressing waste isn't large enough to justify those shifts. But I was curious how that group of frontline workers fits into this piece of the puzzle.
I mean, they are certainly a key frontline worker. I would say we haven't necessarily gone that up the food chain, the supply chain in that. I do have peers at WWF who do work at that node, if you will. I think some of these concepts can apply equally. I would say that's next step, at least from the standpoint of the pact and the investments we might make. But I don't know if you all have any perspective on engagement outside the kitchen walls or outside the manufacturing walls.
First, I love the idea. I think this is brilliant. And one thing that I would say, though, is that all of this can inform forecasting, can inform procurement, and bridging the different departments within universities and probably within any industry is a big challenge. And especially because procurement is so upstream and food waste is so downstream. And how do you close that loop? And how do you make this information that we capture from the transformed food into, okay, these are the raw ingredients that we need. And I think for those of you who are signatory of the pact, it's very difficult to measure what we waste, what is defined as waste, and to go back to, okay, what should I purchase less and what should I purchase more? Because the food that we are wasting is not what we bought. We transformed it in the meantime. And food service and restaurants, I think, are facing this very accurately. But to your point, like if we are able to capture that data, then we can go to procurement, and procurement can go to suppliers.
As everybody was speaking, I had an idea. At Fresh Del Monte, one of the things that we heard from the supervisors of the plant, because we observed they had a dedicated line, a couple lines, for this one client of theirs. I'm not going to name the client. It's a big box retailer. And they said, you know, gosh, they keep on rejecting all of our finished product. And it's not that it's because there was one celery spear or two celery spears that were a little bit off color, maybe not green enough, right? And we said, well, what do you do about that? And they said, we make a lot more product so that they accept what, you know, the purchase order. And I'm like, well, what do you do with the rest? And they're like, you know, we might repackage it. They were sort of vague about that. And so what I was thinking, they were so that's just, oh my gosh, that's crazy, right? And they would make the spears bigger and they would chop it off before they went into the plastic bin so they would get the most green. I mean, this is one specific example. And the thought I had was if you convened the farmers, you know, the individuals that are actually growing the food and shipping it to you know, an organization like Fresh Del Monte, convening all three of them together. Because what Fresh Del Monte said is we need to have a discussion with them about why, you know, their expectations are too high. But they also didn't want to lose the client. So being able to have them all together and talk a little bit about each of their perspectives. Why is this important to you? How can we modify? How can we communicate to the end user what's going on here, and see if we can match expectations with what's coming in? I don't know if that answers your question a little bit, but interesting thought.
Right. Anyone else with some questions? Oh, yeah. Kristen, go.
Hi, this is Katie from Whole Foods. Thanks for the panel. It's been really interesting. We have a lot of very passionate team members at Whole Foods, probably more than your average grocery store. And so I would really like to put out a call for bright ideas in terms of waste reduction to our team members, but there are 10,000 plus of them. So how do you balance empowering team members and engaging them in the process of solutioning while also maintaining like sort of standardization and control over what programs exist out there in the universe? Thanks.
Yeah, you know, my team has become passionate about food waste just because of all the tools that we use here at Compass. One thing that we try to do is there's a national social media program that we can use and highlight, hey, this is what's going on in our marketplace today, and everybody is supposed to sign up and be able to participate in this this social media app, and so we'll gather the team, highlight some of the benefits of, hey, look at how much how clean these pineapple trims look, or the example of watermelon when you're dicing it up, how much red is still left on the peel, right? That's an exciting thing to kind of showcase throughout our units. So being able to showcase that on a grander scale through my sector itself, and then passing that up to my VPs and saying, hey, look at what my team's doing. They're very excited. They want to highlight what my team's doing as well. So I think it's a lot of buy-in and communication from a team leader on the up to the store leaders and VPs to communicate across the broader sector and the broader network.
Yeah, I think, and again, like Mary is there, and she is the sustainability director for Aramark, and we made sure that what we were offering in terms of training was filling a need, a need, and was coherent with whatever was going on. And I think probably at Whole Foods you don't have the same type of waste depending on where your stores are. And I would say that was the power of what we did, is that the ideas were very local, and the selection of the winning idea was very local as well. And even though we had like very similar ideas, some of them were very specific to a location because of the real estate, because of the season in New England is not the same as California. And so I think being able to call out what is offered as the corporate, like Whole Foods level, but what is available also at a local level is super important. And then after, I mean, I think, being hands-on, taking the ideas, categorizing them, using technology to do that. This is where the QR codes and having to put things in Excel was a bit tricky, but in the end, you really get the value out of everything. It's almost like trimming all the flesh of the watermelon, right? You are trimming all the flesh of the ideas that were submitted because you are able to really use technology to go deep into them.
Again, I had time to think. I think there's value in just capturing those ideas and just allowing the workers to submit them. And then with analytics, you can sort them, look at the trends, what's really bubbling up, what's sort of, you're hearing it across all the regions. But because of data analytics, you can get it to a local level, you can get a regional level, you can do seasonality. And so you can then roll out the most exciting ideas that may be universal to Whole Foods, but also you can localize it by just gathering that information and analyzing it.
Hi, thank you. I'm very inspired by all of these presentations and the work that you're all doing. We are just coming off of a multi-year project that was employee engaged, that was like working with a cohort of workers in depth over a period of time. And one of the things that we noticed was, like you were talking about empowerment, and a lot of the things that are going on have to do in some ways with power relationships in large top-down businesses. And so we noticed that it took some time to build the trust with the workers to get to the place where things were really coming forward and they were willing to share. And I'm wondering if you all could comment on the issues of building trust and the power relationships. Thanks. And also, we'd love to share about our project as well, and we have a report that we are happy to share and email.
And you're from JHU?
Yes.
Awesome.
you're here because we discussed that a little bit yesterday. I think this is a real question, and that again come back to the culture, because I mean trust takes time to be built, and with a workforce that has a very big turnover, it's hard. I think the example that you shared about like just waiting 9 months and like just being 9 months in a job and being considered is really something that is very powerful. Something that I lived through at Stanford is we kept all the employees during the pandemic, and I think that built trust as well. That showed our employees that we valued them, and you know, and not every organization is able to do that. But I think, you know, showing people that you value them, that they have their ideas and the time that you spend training them is something that is important, is the foundation of trust.
I think a lot of it starts from your hiring process and just how you interact with the team itself. You know, if you show up and you know, you're not hiring somebody just as a worker, you're hiring somebody who's going to be around 40 hours plus every week. So building that, you know, familiarity with the team and saying, hey, how was your weekend? Did your kids win their baseball game, right? That's a little detail that you could remember going into the weekend and coming out of it, that everybody's got lives outside of this. And by highlighting and recognizing that from your employees, I think you get a lot more buy-in and trust from them in that regard, but also the turnover slows because they feel heard and understood a lot more, and there's just that much more reason to come back to work tomorrow and with a smile on your face.
So that's a really interesting problem to solve. Bob's, and I had 3 different perspectives when it came to getting frontline workers to open up and talk about what they knew. Bob's Red Mail is employee owned, so there is an extreme amount of buy-in in support of making sure that the organization was as efficient and as effective as possible. There was no issue with really getting people to talk. Cozy Shack, it was very familial, the culture. So you had brothers and sisters and aunts, and you know, they were Mexican Americans, immigrants, really, and they had a lot of longevity at that one plant, and so they were nervous about talking. They were like, well, we haven't really been asked to do this, but once the plant manager said, hey, we got to do this. We want to show how good we are with food waste mitigation and identifying ideas. It was the kumbaya when he got everyone together and said, we're going to spend 30 minutes talking about food waste and writing down our ideas. That actually worked. And then Fresh Del Monte, completely different experience. They engage contractors. And so really, they didn't really have a lot of connection to the organization, a lot of high turnover. And so the prizes and incentives and the recognition among their peers was how we got it to move forward, for them to talk and open up.
Thank you, guys. We have time for one more. Nope, Kristen says no question time left. But I saw
folks.
I saw a hand go up in the back. I'm happy to stay for a few minutes and answer. We'll try to answer that one. But I guess we are sending you off to the main stage for the final keynote. And for those who are still around this afternoon, we are going to deep dive into the toolkit that came out of all of this work. For those who want to get your hands in the bin, we'll share that after lunch. So thank you all for coming in.